What's up, Detroit? This is Bryles and Riley Rundown back for another episode. All right, Detroit, week 3 is in the books, and yeah,
not looking too good.
Looking good at all. We played the Titans. Well, I guess we could say played. We showed up at least. Was not what we all thought was going to happen. It was worse than week 1 with the Rams. Way worse than week 2. We're definitely gonna throw out all of the lowlights.
Before we go into the majority of this podcast is clearly going to be about the negatives, so most of you know. I want to get in the couple positives we have because let's be honest, there's not very many.
No.
We could end on positives, make it look a little better, but let's be honest, there's not a lot. I want to get out the couple. I'm going to give you a few to start, and you can go as well. Number one, Mikel Shores, a big positive. Looked great. I don't think you could ask for much more against him, or for him, I'm sorry.
Early plug. I actually, if you guys haven't liked our new page yet, the Sportin' in the D website that we got on Facebook now, it's actually a blog that me and Brendan started. A few of our friends.
There is an article on there.
Yeah, I wrote an article about Mikel Shore. If he can come through, this team does have the sky is the limit for this team. But you guys can read that. I'm with Brendan. Mikel Shore looked great. I'm going to get to a couple issues that I have with Mikel Shore.
Yeah, we'll get there. Do you have any positives to get in there? Because I have a couple more.
I have one positive. It's going to be a kind of weird positive, but I think we have figured out that Sean Hill is probably the best backup in football.
I don't know. I had to look at the backups, but he's a great backup. I don't think there's any doubt.
Yeah, honestly, the player of the game has to go to Sean Hill if you're gonna find one for the Lions.
Arguably,
it was great. He had a great 18 seconds.
Okay, I think I have 3 big things. Is that it for your positive?
That's the only. I
figured you didn't have a lot. Number one, I don't understand. I've actually heard a lot of people suggest Matt Stafford had a bad game. I don't know what game these people are watching. What was his completion percentage? Don't get me wrong. He did not have a great game.
He was 33 for 42. So, yeah, he
9 incomplete passes for a touchdown. And how many yards?
278.
For those of you who can't tell, I normally have a computer in front of me. I forgot to bring my computer today. But how many was that? I'm sorry.
278.
278? I mean, that's not that bad of a game. So that's number one. Obviously, you want to see better, but you can handle that.
Yeah.
Number 2, if there's any game that is going to teach this coaching staff that they can't be so stubborn in their ways sometimes, it's this game. Yep. I love this coaching staff in general. You know, I was never a Gunther Cunningham guy until I read some pieces about him recently. I like him a little bit more now. I think they learned that they have to change things up a little bit. You can't rely on 4 guys to get pressure. I really do believe they learned that from this game.
Yep.
I also believe that they learned that as much as it's great to have balance, you can't run the ball 25 times in the first half and 10 in the second half. It has to be throughout the whole game. And my final positive, which is not as much a positive as a you know what, Lions fans, don't give up hope. The Patriots are 1-2, and a lot of people would say, oh, well, you know, they played Baltimore. They lost to Baltimore. Well, we lost to San Francisco.
Yep.
I compare that loss. And our other loss, Tennessee, there's Arizona.
Yep.
Now, I personally have been saying all year, well, from preseason to now, I really do believe Arizona's a dark horse this year. I think they got a real shot at making a playoff run. A Super Bowl run I don't believe in. But I do believe that they got a shot at a playoff run. And we lost to Tennessee. So it is a very comparable situation. But they need to fix a lot of things, and that's what we're going to get to now.
Yep. My turn. As Brendan said, I have no really good that came out of this game.
And my good were very iffy goods.
His was very small. First off, special teams, wake the heck up, because that was the poorest execution.
I could have played just as good as special teams, and I'm not joking. More often than not, when someone makes that statement, they're exaggerating. That's how bad our special team was. We did nothing.
It's bad enough that you get the Music City Miracle in the first half, but then you come back right after taking the lead and give up our kick return for a touchdown to tie the game.
And
that
you know what?
Ridiculous.
Honestly, that Music City Miracle play, well, for you guys that don't know, the simple one lateral wasn't quite the same.
Right.
I didn't have that much of a problem.
No, it was a great design by Tennessee. It was out of nowhere, and it was a great play.
You can't let that happen again.
Exactly.
If you give up one, you have to be able to stop the second one.
All right, my number 2. I've been saying this for the last couple weeks. Brendan's been kind of backing Matt Stafford on this. I'm sorry. Sean Hill was in the game for probably about a minute and 30 seconds and found found Calvin more times than Stafford has all season. That's a little ridiculous. I mean, Sean Hill is in that point now. I know that he's not the starter, so he was basically just letting everything hang loose. But when Sean Hill, because going into that drive, I think Calvin Johnson had about 60 yards for 4 catches, I think. He ended up with 10 catches and 164 yards.
I guess our difference here is we don't actually know what's going on. We're not inside the coaching staff.
Right.
He believes, you believe that it's on Stafford. You think Stafford's not looking at Calvin. I don't think they want to look to Calvin. It's not that they don't want to look to Calvin. I think they're calling the short yardage plays.
Exactly, and that's what I have a problem.
And I put it on the coach.
I'm not blaming on Stafford, or not blaming it all on Stafford. I'm just saying that Sean Hill is having Sean Hill basically broke out because of the fact that he was finding Calvin, because he knows that Calvin's out there. All I'm saying is if you have an asset out there, Detroit's coaching
they got to get him the ball more.
I mean, the dude had...
That catch he had, overtime.
Yep.
One of the most insane catches I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yep.
The guy's got it on his fingertips. He's literally as high in the air as he can possibly get.
Yep.
He can catch anything. Throw him the ball.
Yep.
I agree he needs the ball more. I just put the blame on the coaching staff.
And now I'm going to go to the play that drove me insane and still is. Jacob Lacey, get your butt off the field right now. That catch that Nate Washington had over you made you look completely retarded. You got burnt. Not only did you get burnt, it wasn't good enough that he took the ball from in front of you.
You didn't know where it was.
You didn't even know where it was, and he was 20 yards beyond you by the time you turned your back and saw that he was running in for a touchdown. Get off the field and let someone else play.
Not only that play, but the whole play of our secondary is disgusting.
Yep.
Now here's the thing: we knew they weren't good going in. You got to get pressure if you want to disguise it. I'll tell you what, I really am a believer in this. This draft strategy of best available, but that ends now. Yep. Going into next year, unless you sign from big name free agents, I don't care if you take corner. I'm not saying you should necessarily do this, but I have zero problem if they go cornerback in the first 3 rounds.
Yep. All right, well, it probably seems like we're destroying the Lions, but they deserve it after this week, because now I'm going to move on to another guy. BP, start taking some CP. Yes, I'm talking about Brandon Pettigrew, start taking some catching practice, because that was ridiculous. You catch the ball, and then, before you even turn around, somehow you manage to give the ball right back to the defender.
And here's my problem. I believe it was a cornerback who took the ball.
Yep, it was a cornerback.
Do you realize you have 60 to 80 pounds on this guy?
He basically looked like he gave the ball because he didn't feel like getting tackled. He gave the ball to him, and then there he goes right down the field. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry.
He has so much wasted talent. That's my problem with him. There's a lot of positions on this team that we have lack of talent, like at cornerback. Brandon Pettigrew has some talent.
Yep.
You know what? I do think he was a reasonable pick when they took him in the first round, but he hasn't produced like that.
And I'm going to take credit for all of the comeback yesterday, because if we do remember last week, I called out one certain receiver to have a big game. He didn't have quite the big game that I was looking for, but he did have a respectable game. And he had a big play. I'm talking, of course, about Titus Young. They ran that last play perfect. It was probably one of the best Hail Marys I have ever seen, because everyone knew that Calvin was going to have about 6 guys on him. The funny part is you can have 6 guys on Calvin and still manage to complete a pass, because Calvin still wound up out-jumping the entire secondary and middle linebackers for the Tennessee Titans, and are basically tipped the ball right to Titus.
It was hit by a Tennessee.
It was hit by Tennessee, but he was higher than pretty much every defender back there. And then Titus caught it. That was a well-done.
Right, Titus was honestly open.
He knew
once he caught the ball, there was no debate would he be tackled. I mean,
Titus Young knew exactly what he was doing in that play, and it was
honestly it did look designed. It did look like Titus Young wasn't ready, wasn't looking to get up. It looked like Titus Young, and you know what? You had Brian Broyles, I believe it was, right on the other side of him.
Yep, exactly. And I'm also glad I called that guy out last week too. I'm glad that Broyles is out on the field, like Brendan said.
Even if he's not making plays, it is nice to see him out on the field.
Okay. Next one we're going to talk about.
Man, we got a lot of things to rip.
Yeah, and this one isn't even really a rip. This is one more good thing. I know I've been ripping him off, so I'm going to try to play the your good cop, bad cop here. Thank you, Detroit Lions, for not completely letting Chris Johnson blow up on you, because all week I was hearing Chris Johnson. I have a major negative about that.
Once you finish your
Chris Johnson was going to do this, Chris Johnson was going to do that, and all sorts. Way to focus on Chris Johnson, but just to let you know, you still had Jake Locker on the field, and he broke records on you. So
okay, here's my major negative. This is another plug for an article. If you want to read an article, it's probably my personal favorite one on our site yet. Not even written by me, but written by Ian Rye. It is titled Penalty Detroit, Loss of Game, Repeat Entire Season.
Yep.
He discusses the loss in this game, and the things we're talking about are a lot of the common things. He brought up some things that people didn't notice. Okay, and this is one of them. Chris Johnson. I believe he averaged 1.1 yard per carry.
Yep. 1.7.
1.7?
Yep.
Okay, he averaged 1.8 yards after contact.
Yep.
He averaged more yards after getting hit than he did per carry. What?
Exactly. It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know. We've been saying this for the past few weeks. We don't know about this team still. The funny part is we still do not know about this Detroit Lions
think we know
team.
that this isn't the team that is going to come out and win 12 games.
Exactly. Well, they were making a very interesting point today on a couple of radio shows. They were saying if you want to finish 12-4, I believe it was, think about what you have to do now.
Right, that's not going
to. You have to go 11-1 just to finish 12-4. If you want to finish 9-7,
realistically, this is what you're going to have to do, in my opinion, to make the playoffs at this point. Let's look at. Can you pull up the schedule real quick? I believe I know the games for the most part, but just to make sure we get everything right, there's a lot of tough games the remainder of the way.
Throwing that out there, you're telling me to pull up the schedule, which I am doing right now. I have never said this so early in the season. Next week is a must-win. You're going.
I agree.
Minnesota coming to town. Minnesota's now 2-1. If you let Minnesota go 2 games above on you with Green Bay playing, we're recording this on Monday, so it's not over yet. With Green Bay playing right now and having a possibility of going 3-1, plus Chicago already sitting at 3-1, you're going to be the only team at 1-3 with all these other teams sitting at 3-1. You cannot.
No, you absolutely cannot.
All right, so we've got the schedule here. Next week we got in Detroit playing Minnesota.
But here's where it gets tough. Philadelphia, very losable. In Philadelphia, very losable. In Chicago, very losable. Versus Seattle, losable. Jacksonville, Minnesota. In Minnesota could be tough. They look better, but they still don't look that good to me. Then you got Green Bay, Houston. So tough games you got left, at least. Philadelphia, Chicago, Green Bay, Houston, Green Bay again, Atlanta, and Chicago. You have at least 7 tough games.
I'm going to throw Arizona in there, too.
You could easily throw Arizona. You could possibly throw Minnesota, at least in Minnesota.
Yep.
I mean, and you could say Seattle.
The problem with this team...
But out of the 7 I named, even if you want to win 10 games, you have to win 3 or 4. Have to win 3 or 4 of those, assuming you don't lose any of the must-wins.
The biggest thing I'm looking at here is in our preseason preview for the Lions, we were looking at a lot of these games thinking, there's a blowout, there's a blowout, there's a blowout. I'm sorry. At Jacksonville is scaring me now. With this team, I don't know. I mean,
if there's one game on the schedule that doesn't scare me, it's at Jacksonville.
I thought the exact same thing with Tennessee. And
I thought Tennessee was bad, but I wouldn't compare anybody to Jacksonville.
True.
I think Jacksonville's the worst team in the league.
Yeah, I mean, the one game that I'm hoping, if you don't beat Indianapolis, then you might as well just pack your bags.
And that's at home, and that's why.
Yeah. But let's get back to yesterday's game. Let's not move ahead too much because we're going to be doing the previews of those games sooner or later. Not like we said before, there's not much we can take away from this game. Stafford is hurt now. We don't know much about him.
I wouldn't be too concerned about it personally.
Yeah, they're calling it a little hamstring issue. Yesterday during the game, it was a lower leg issue. Now it's the hamstring issue. I have a feeling they'll probably just do the Belichick rule here and basically play it day to day and let people think that he's going to be out. I think he'll be okay, though, to play.
I'd be very surprised if Stafford doesn't come out and play.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the only way he comes out and doesn't come out and play is if it's a legitimate risk that he could lose the rest of the season if he doesn't play.
Now we're going to get to a huge point. We haven't even talked about it yet. The dreaded QB sneak at the end of the game. I'm sorry, Jim Schwartz. Take some credit because this is ridiculous. You're saying it was a miscommunication, and then Raiola completely got thrown under the bus today. Raiola took all the blame, saying that he was never supposed to snap the ball. You as a coach have to. You were calling it.
See, I don't agree. I think Schwartz I actually couldn't agree or disagree more. Jim Schwartz literally came out at the press conference and said it was a miscommunication. I should have called a timeout. And a miscommunication, it's the coach's fault.
True. It is the coach's fault. However, he was saying that it was too loud, and he knew that he knew that it was hard to communicate. So why wouldn't you call timeout before the play was ran?
Well, it was his fault. I'm more so saying I don't think he threw Raiola under the bus. I put a lot of blame on both of them, honestly, because I love the play call. Actually, it's exactly what I would have done. Because even if you got a false start or something and you screwed up, anything but what happened, you still got a shot at a field goal.
See, my best play call would have been to go through or not go through with the QB sneak, definitely.
Well, no, not the QB sneak. I like the play call of no play.
No, that's exactly what I was expecting them to do.
If you got the false start, if something happened and you screwed up, other than what happened, you still get the field goal. Yep. You can still go for it if you want to. I mean, you have options.
Yep.
But I put the blame on Schwartz because, he should have called a timeout. He really should have called a timeout regardless, just so they could discuss it.
Yeah.
And Raiola still needs to know not to stamp the ball.
That was my biggest point with the Schwartz thing. In that situation, if you're going to come out and say it was too loud it was too loud to make the call and be able to hear or whatever, that's when you as a head coach in the NFL, you have to know to call a timeout. If you think there's any type of miscommunication in this type of game, you call timeout, bring everybody over. You basically look at Dominic Raiola in the eye and say, do not snap this
under
football.
no circumstance. You are literally the most important player in this entire game.
Do not
because if somebody else jumps, we get 5-yard penalty, kick a field goal.
Exactly. But and here's another one for you guys. We've been harping on the refs a lot lately. I'm going to harp on the refs one more time. What the heck were you measuring at the end of that game?
27-yard person. I actually saw a snapshot of the play-by-play on NFL.com, and it was pretty funny. 27-yard personal foul penalty.
Yeah, exactly. What I'm getting at, though, the play was the QB sneak. You literally picked the ball up, moved it back a foot and a half from where you originally had it, and then they pull the chains out and measure it to make sure.
Which is almost impossible to go backwards on a quarterback.
Exactly.
Sneak. You can go nowhere, but I never heard of. And he didn't go backwards a little bit. Yep. He lost like a yard.
Exactly. And the fact that they brought the measurement out just tells me you have to get these refs out.
But as much as these refs, I think this was probably, in my personal opinion, this was the biggest week for highlighting how bad these refs are.
Yes.
The Lions couldn't get some of the... In that overtime drive that Tennessee had, I believe there were 4 or 5 third and longs. And when I say third and long, I mean at least third and 9. I think they had multiple third and above 10s.
Yep.
Third and 18, I believe it was, broken up by a holding call.
Yep. And you can't blame the refs on these ones because most of them were pretty obvious. And honestly...
And you can't get a holding call on a third and 18.
And 3 of them were offsides. You
know
cannot
what?
jump offsides when it's 3rd and 7 and 3rd and 8.
You know what? If Locker beats you with his arm, you feel a lot better than when you... On 3rd and 18, that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
There's multiple different defensive styles you could have played to stop that.
Yep.
You could have rushed so they didn't have time to get the ball deep. You could have played almost a prevent defense. Just don't hold your man.
Exactly.
And I believe it was Chris Houston, who I think had a pretty good game.
Yep.
But what are you doing?
Exactly. I mean, we can go on and on about the refs, and honestly...
You guys are lucky we recorded this tonight because this wouldn't have been so calm yesterday.
Exactly. And honestly, the refs are probably here to stay because Goodell is noticing that he's not losing any viewers from home on TV. He's selling out every stadium still. So obviously,
I think the problem comes when it starts leading to suspensions for players and coaches.
Exactly.
And I think it's getting there.
Well, you're going to see Belichick get fined $40,000, and I would not be surprised if he might get suspended. I don't know if anybody saw it. But after the Sunday night game, he actually was running down the field and grabbed an official.
Which, to be fair, I think is completely ridiculous that he's going to get a fine, maybe.
I feel
he
like
was just trying to talk to him. He wasn't being physical.
He should honestly be suspended for not choking the guy because that game was officiated ridiculously.
And he just tried to get the guy's attention.
Yeah.
But
that's not Lions, and we're still going to try to keep talking about this game, even though it's making us sick. Looking forward now. I mean,
we'll finish. Just wrap it up. Looking forward.
Yeah, we gotta get this game out of our heads. I mean, one great thing to take out of this, Jason Hansen. I mean, he's just money still. You know what? Yeah, you know what? Let's end this in a positive way. Exactly.
You can choose Jason Hansen if you like. Let's do the number one positive that comes from this game in any way, shape, or form.
My number one positive, honestly, has to be the Calvin Johnson touchdown. He finally got in the end zone. If you guys remember, I'm the one who said during the first week that Calvin has a chance to get a touchdown a game, and I felt confident saying that. I didn't really mean a touchdown a game. I meant average a touchdown per game. Honestly, this was the first game, and it wasn't even Stafford. It was Sean Hill. This was the first game that everybody was basically focusing on Calvin, and it's sad because, I mean, the guy can win the game on his own, which he completely proved. I mean, Calvin probably had more big catches in that game than Pettigrew dropped. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much this team could go, or where this team could go with Calvin.
My number one thing is that, and this is, I guess you could argue it's a great thing. Next week, and I said this last week too, this is their last shot to rebound.
Yep.
You're going to know what this team is next week.
Well,
Not necessarily. I guess that's not a fair statement. You're going to know if this team has a legitimate playoff chance after next week.
Yep. You cannot start 1-4.
100% done if they lose to Minnesota.
Yep.
And not only that, I want to see them come out and blow out Minnesota. Not saying it'll happen.
Yep.
But this is the kind of thing a team can rally around. A team can go, okay, guys, we played like absolute bleep.
Yep.
And really, I mean, because they got talent, and they can take this game and say, if we let this happen, we're not doing anything this year. Yep. Let's go out there and play real football like we can. Or they can let this loss get to them and let it ruin the season.
Well, one more thing I'm going to talk about, because this is actually really starting to drive me nuts. If you remember right, during the pregame show, I said one thing I wanted the secondary to do was force a turnover. This team, I think, what do we have? 1 turnover on the entire season so far?
Not many.
Yeah, because they didn't have one against one of the worst quarterbacks in football.
Did they have a fumble?
They might have.
I thought they had
the fumble in week
early.
1, I think.
I think they had a fumble in this game, too.
Maybe.
Early on in the game, yeah. Then they got a field goal out of it. They couldn't get the ball at the 30-yard line, 25-yard line, and can't move the ball. Yeah. You can't pick up 1 first down.
What I'm getting at, though, you're an NFL team. You have one of the best defensive lines. That's another thing I wish we could talk about, honestly, but we're running out of time, is the fact that this defensive line is honestly starting to become a little overrated right now.
See, man, I don't even want to get into this. Not a fair statement. They had, I believe, 7 sacks going in this game. It might have even been 8. The highest in the league behind Chicago. That was a bad game. They're being trashed on national TV. Why? I don't get where you're getting this. They had 7 or 8. They were second in the league going into that game with sacks. I don't understand where people are getting.
I think the biggest reason why is because of the fact that they're not showing up in games they need to be showing up. I mean, you have the Tennessee Titans. Do not have a great offensive line. Do not have a great quarterback. Do not have a great running back.
Oh, and these other stats, those defensive ends and defensive tackles who get those sacks, keep in mind those teams are blitzing more than we are, too.
Right, definitely.
I think that the D-line may not be quite as great as we thought 2 years ago.
Right, exactly.
But they're being disrespected way too much now.
That's what I was getting at. We were thinking about names and everything to call this defensive line. And now all of a sudden it's kind of, I mean, Fairley really hasn't panned out to what we were expecting.
It's too early. He's played 4 career games.
Exactly. But what I'm getting at is he's not performing at the level that Sue was in the first part. And we pretty much drafted Fairley at the same exact time as Sue with the first round pick. I mean, just by knowing that we needed someone in the secondary and we went out and got Fairley because we thought it was going to shore up our defensive line, you have to start showing a little bit of something here sooner or later. One thing I will give them credit for, I mean, they did, like I said, they held Chris Johnson to 24 yards. I mean, that's a lot.
The run defense has been stronger this year. Even though San Francisco put up yards, they didn't dominate us on the run game.
Right. And I mean, 378 yards out of Jake Locker, you can't really call that on the defensive line. I mean, that's a lot to do with the secondary and stuff, too. I mean, a lot of it, I'd really like to see the yards after catch for that game because Nate Washington, I know, had a few that broke out. I believe Jared Cook's touchdown run was one that he broke open on.
That one actually drove me crazy, too. Yeah. He had 2 guys sitting right in front of him.
Yep.
And he just kind of walked through them.
Yep, exactly. And
honestly, it wasn't even a broken tackle. They just kind of gave him a pat on the back and said, good job.
Yep. But there's not much more that we can rip apart this team on. I mean, there is, but...
There's too much. We'd never finish.
I'm kind of getting tired of it now. I mean, we're basically throwing the entire team under the bus, which they deserve. But I'm calling them out. This week, I want a dominant win. You're coming back home to Ford Field. It's going to be hostile. You're probably going to get booed if it starts.
I'm actually really curious about that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think
I'm not going to boo them.
I don't think you're going to get booed in the first part of the game, but if they start going south again.
If you come out and don't look like you're going to win this game, it's going to be a tough place to play.
If Stafford does the exact same thing he did in week 1, where he drives them down the field, throws a pick in the red zone or anything, or turns it over and they don't get points, you'll hear boos. I'm throwing it out there right now because the Lions faithful have been through this way too much. This team is a good team. They're not performing like a good team right now.
Well, they're a good offense.
Exactly.
And the defense should be capable.
Exactly. When your offense can put up 41 points and you're losing 44-41 against one of the...
Your defense is... You're really only asking your defense to hold teams to the 20s.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're going to put up about 4... I mean, the San Francisco game was a little different.
Right.
You're not going to score that many points.
But on an average game, if your defense could hold them to the 20s, you're going to win.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I'm calling you out. Get out there and get me a dominant win against Minnesota. You're coming back to a hostile crowd. They're going to be on you, but Just turn this thing around. I mean, it's ridiculous. Minnesota has a better record than you right now. Christian Ponder, as a quarterback, has a better record right now than Matthew Stafford. I'm not putting the blame on Stafford at all this season yet. If he doesn't start turning it around a little bit more and start looking for Calvin, I am going to start getting a little bit more upset though. Like I said, Calvin has to be a key factor in this team's offense, and so far it really hasn't been. So just get me something out of him this week. I am basically begging you, as a fan, Detroit Lions, just come out here, play with your backs against the wall, act like there's no tomorrow, and just put a whooping on the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, you have to be able to. You've done it for the past 2 seasons. Brendan, you want to add?
Nah, I'm good. You'll hear from us in a few more days, really. I want to get the pregame up. Can't wait for next week. Maybe we can actually get some positives out of this team.
Yeah.
That's about all I have to say.
Yeah, I'm getting tired of this. For Brendan Riley, I am Tommy Riles. Oh, I'm going to throw out there one more thing. Like I said earlier in the show, guys, we do have a new page out. It's called Sportin' in the D. It's a blog about everything Detroit sports, kind of like what we do here on the Riles and Riley Show. Go out there, like us. Actually, it's through WordPress.
We'll have the link on our
Exactly.
video.
So go ahead and go out there, check it out, like us on Facebook, and follow our blogs, and let us know what you think. For Brendan Riley, this is Tommy Riles, and once again we say, go Lions.